great weekend, and I want to thank you. Thank you for committing your time to AHAB and to the subcommittee so that we can review the community land trust, any issues, what the options are, how we are, and how we may want to move forward in recommending a land trust to the Board of County Commissioners. And so this is the first, I'm assuming, of perhaps several meetings that we'll have in regards to community land trust. And so one of the first things that I wanted to do in this meeting is really choose a leader from the voting members that will report back to the general AHAB board, the entire board. And so do we have a volunteer amongst you who will report back to the board that will serve as a leader on the CLT subcommittee?
I'm happy to do so, Cheryl.
Okay, we have Ms. Sarah Combs has volunteered for that role. Thank you so much, Sarah. I certainly appreciate it. And without holding you guys up, let's talk a little bit about what CLTs are. So we are talking about the possibility of creating a community land trust or a CLT that will operate as a receivership for properties within Hillsborough County to create long-term sustainability for affordable housing and economic development options in certain distressed areas or areas of opportunity. And moving forward with this, I thought it was important to just kind of give you a backdrop on, typically what CLTs are, how they operate, and what some of our options are. So we have several CLTs in Florida. We only have one CLT in the Tampa Bay area, though, and that is Bright Communities Trust. Bright Communities Trust was created by Anthony Jones, who used to run the Pinellas County Housing and Community Development and the Housing Finance Authority over in Pinellas County. So he created this some years back, and that is a separate standalone CLT. And so the options right now are whether or not the county will want to create a separate standalone CLT, some type of a hybrid or government-led CLT or land bank or land banking unit, or how we want to move forward with that. There's a couple of different, I want to say, features that are critically different for, let's say, a land bank and a typical CLT. But the most important of these is that a CLT will keep the land in affordability terms, typically in perpetuity, and a land bank will utilize land for the building up of affordable resources, but then that land is then conveyed over to a nonprofit or a for-profit entity to be able to develop with some parameters around it for a period of time, but typically not in perpetuity. So that's one of the main differences there. The other main difference between a county or government-led type CLT or land bank and a nonprofit CLT is that if there's a nonprofit that's created, it's very similar to let's say a CRA, in that it takes a longer period of time for it to become sustainable. And so if the option is to create a nonprofit CLT, then certainly in order for that CLT to be successful, even with receiving of land, the CLT would still need some fiscal support over a period of time to support the staffing and administrative needs to carry out the function of the CLT. Whereas a government-led CLT, they could fold in some of those administrative costs and functions into their current processes. And so those are a couple of things that that I'd like for you to consider as you're looking at what options you want to see kind of laid out in where we're going and how we build up this conversation. And so right now I'm just pretty open. I'm here to serve as a resource and as a guide and as a support in this process for you.
Cheryl, I have a question. How much land in Hillsborough County does Hillsborough County have that could be, regardless if it's a land bank or a CLT? How many parcels or properties does Hillsborough County have, to just give us an idea of what the scope is?
I mean, there are a lot of properties. I want to say right now, just within the affordable housing, just within our coffers, I want to say that we have over maybe 50, maybe we have 50 acres and access to so much more.
Oh, wow.
Correct. So there's tremendous opportunity here.
Hey, Cheryl, this is Liz. I just have one question. Have you considered, rather than creating a new CLT in Hillsborough, working with Anthony's group to expand their functions? I'm just thinking that then you don't have some of the startup costs and time of a new nonprofit and take advantage of the work they're already doing.
Right. So we have done a couple of projects with Bright Communities Trust in Hillsborough County, and so that could certainly be a possibility. And so one of the things that did concern me is that, the CLT, that the CLT not be competing for land that is deploying. So the CLT itself would serve as a deployment entity and not be competing against those same lands to develop it. But that's a possibility and should be something that's discussed by the committee.
Cheryl?
Yes, ma'am.
Is there any, say, I'm quite curious, examples of work that the Bright House Anthony Group has done that we can say, kind of examine to ensure this is the path we would like to take?
Yeah, I can give you, I can provide you some examples of what Bright Community has done and what some other entities have done as well throughout the state. Good morning, Mr. Hollis. How are you? And so I will provide the committee with at least 2 to 3 examples of the setup of CLTs, 2 to 3 CLTs throughout the state, and an example of their work product. Now, in Hillsborough County, I can share with you that we have done some single family products with Bright Community Trust, but nothing, no multifamily units or anything like that.
Cheryl, it's Liz. If I could just interject for 1 second, though, I just want to clarify, if I understand it correctly, the CLT owns the land, but does not necessarily develop the land. So if we're looking at projects that are held by the CLT, we're looking at the work of different developers. So I just want to make sure, based on Ms. Burton's question, if we look at something that's built on something that Anthony's group owns, he isn't necessarily the developer. So there's going to be a lot of different kinds of products that we see on this property. So the CLT is all about the land ownership, and the development is somewhat separate, if I understand correctly.
You do understand correctly, and that creates the kind of angst with whether or not a CLT will actually be the developer as well. Because if the CLT is a developer as well, then they are competing with the other developers that they should be working with. And so there are some hybrid models that are out there that seem to be working, especially in areas that are lacking the affordable housing developers that's needed to carry those things forward. Mr. Hollis.
I was looking for my raise hand button, but I can't find it. So anyway, maybe we could, I know that there have been some other successful community land trusts, even in Florida. Sometime could we gather some data on those successful ones that have been in operation for, some number of years, not just brand new startups?
Right. So what I'll provide the subcommittee is 2 to 3 examples of what I'll consider some sound CLTs that exist that have existed in Florida with some work products. So typically when a CLT is set up, David, it takes some time for them to get a work product. Yeah, so I want to give a couple of different work products as well to give the subcommittee a good idea of what could occur as well. So not just in Florida, because there's other places that have had huge success with CLTs, and some not so much.
If there's any of those in some great locations, do you think we should travel there to look at them?
Not right now. Not right now. If the circumstances were different.
I was like San Francisco or someplace like that. Okay,
if the circumstances were a little bit different, or maybe a lot different, then I'd be saying, But
the Virgin Islands have great CLTs. We should definitely all spend January examining the ones in the Virgin Islands.
Sounds good.
Cheryl?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it a possible, you said about 50 acres or more, whatever, is it possible for, I would be interested in getting a mapping of some of this land location.
Mm-hmm. I can provide a listing and a mapping of the lands that we currently have in our coffers. And that's in affordable housing. So that's the land that's been kind of turned over to us to put in RFPs and to help nonprofits develop it.
Cheryl, I think what would be super helpful is maybe at our next meeting to have, I know Anthony has a presentation that he's done. I've seen it several times. It's like a 10-minute presentation that really kind of goes through bells and the whistles and the real good summary of a land trust. And so I think that, I don't know how familiar others are. I'm very familiar with the land trust, but might help to have him kind of just give his presentation on land trust, because he's been doing it for so long, to give everyone a good understanding of what a land trust is. And then maybe if we could find someone to present on the other side of it, just the land banking aspect, to kind of, have these two models put put against each other to understand a little bit more about which route and what options, that this committee has. What do y'all think about that?
I think that's a good idea. We run into
Sounds like a
one
great idea.
one issue is that Mr. Jones is now retired.
Really?
And so, yes. Yeah, so Anthony retired a few months back. And so the other thing is that we may want to look at an entity that really is, that supports, land banking and community land trust, but doesn't have a real stake in it, right? They're not creating it for themselves. And so we may want to bring in Jamie Ross or Sean Nesbitt, who's her CLT expert that's on her team from Florida Housing Coalition, to talk about what are some of the possible paths to go down and really explain all of the requirements and criteria of CLTs, land banks, some of the benefits, and some of the drawbacks as well.
Yeah, I think that's it. I was just going to say, I know that they put out a CLT primer, the Affordable Housing Coalition. It was really, really helpful for me when I was doing our land banking, just that document that they created. So if y'all have a chance to go on their website, it's just called their CLT primer. And it's really, really helpful to give yourself a real good understanding of what they've created and, kind of steps and how to do this and some of the drawbacks. I think that's a great idea to have them present on both options and drawbacks, because you're right, they do know a lot about that since they've been doing work in that area for such a long time.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Adam Horton, may I be recognized?
Hi, Mr. Hart.
Can y'all hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I understood that the city was also looking at this possibility of creating a community land trust. So is this a joint effort, or has anybody coordinated what the city is looking at?
The city has moved forward singularly with the effort. I want to say that it went before the city council on the 25th. And so I've not received any documents, not yet. And so we were hoping to be able to come together in coordination with this, and that's not a dead issue. And I want to say theirs is, I believe it's a government-led entity or a government-led effort under the CLT. But please don't quote me.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
And so it's certainly our desire to work closer with the city to create a more fluid process with this. And granted, the county has a tremendous amount of land to offer into it, and the city has a minimal amount of available properties to offer into it. And so I think they had some other goals too that they were seeking to achieve. But I can't speak to that very well.
Well, I guess as part of the information gathering process for us to look at and consider, it'd be interesting to see the structure that they come up with. I think I was invited to a call they're having later this week, but it would be interesting to see what they have. I guess at the end of the day, not to oversimplify it, I mean, essentially a community land trust becomes, as you said, just has an ongoing administrative function into the future, like an HOA or a POA would have in enforcing covenants and restrictions, right? I mean, so, I know that I've participated in with similar entities that are put in place to, to take and maintain and legally protect environmental easements and perpetual restrictions with regards to, preserved property and stuff like that. And this is not dissimilar, but it strikes me that it would be efficient if the two governments could work together on this. I have one more question, which is with regards to the 50 acres that's been identified for affordable housing. Is this property that's basically ready to develop for affordable housing, or does it require entitlement work as well, like rezoning and platting and that type of thing?
Some of it requires rezoning and platting, and some of the properties are ready.
Okay, thank you. So, but you're going to circulate a list of what that stuff is, so we can kind of get our heads around it. Okay.
And we have, I want to say we had 3 or 4 properties really that we're preparing for our next RFP. And they were, I want to say, fairly kind of small properties. We had 2.1 acres. We had a little over 3 acres in an area that was a previous multifamily site. We have a grouping of kind of single family sites that could be a multifamily site or could be combined to develop some type of non-traditional housing on it. And so we got some, I want to say some really good sites. We have one site that has, I want to say about 20 lots on it as well. So we got several different sites that we're really working with that are ready to move forward, and some not as in a ready state.
Okay. And with regards to the Hillsborough County's Affordable Housing Agency, is there a feeling that that the county would pursue entitling or getting the properties that aren't ready for development ready, or that would be a function of the private sector to propose and take them through entitlement?
I want to say it probably all depends. It would depend on a number of different things, but for the most part, we want to RFP the properties over to private developers for development and even for zoning and some of those things as well. So enough time will be lent to the process for a product to be developed, and over time.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Rosenwasser, I saw you came online.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you for. I was planning on being here at 10, but my AC wasn't working, so I had a technician outside.
Okay. Are there any other comments at this time?
I'll catch up with you later on separately, Cheryl. Okay.
So thus far, I have to provide you with 2 to 3 examples of CLTs, successful CLTs, to send a list of the properties with the mapping of the properties to each of you, to bring back Florida Housing Coalition to speak to the subcommittee about the very particulars and the criteria of a CLTs versus land banks, and to bring a copy of, or to get a copy of the City of Tampa's CLT efforts. Is there anything else?
Cheryl, what's your timeline for this? What is your expectation in terms of a timeline?
That depends on this subcommittee. So, Right, however fast you guys want to work this. As I said, when we started this, that really, I'm a resource for you, and I can help guide you through this process. And so the staff is going to be responsive, but the process is yours.
Okay, great. So there's no real set deadlines or anything that we're trying to adhere to.
No. So you can go as quickly, or you can slow it down. It depends on how you think you are in the process. Reporting back to the board at large, and what the desire of the board at large is as well.
Okay, that sounds great. And then Cheryl, in addition to the examples of CLTs that were really great, are you able to give us some examples of land banks that work really great as well? So that way we have a comparable?
We can certainly try to provide you with some examples, and we want to. I want to say that I'm neither endorsing or supporting. I'm providing you information of what's worked for a particular area. So something that may work in another part of the country or even another part of the state may not particularly work here for us for many different reasons. And so we have to be mindful of that as well. But I certainly will go out and get the information that I can get, and I encourage you to also do the same. We want to be as supportive as we can be in this process.
And then one last question, Cheryl. Has Hillsborough County ever done land banking or a CLT before?
Well, we sort of are doing a kind of a land banking now with the properties that are coming over to affordable housing, and we put out an RFP every so often on those properties. So, in a sense, but not in a formalized way.
Okay, so other than Hillsborough County having the property, putting out an RFP and then awarding it to whoever, that's kind of the basis of it.
Right, and that is what land banking is typically. You bank the land. So the thing about Hillsborough County is that for the most part, we've not went out to purchase the land, but on a couple of occasions we have. So we had NSP dollars, and we went out and we purchased some land. So we got 28 acres of some prime real estate, and one of the real kind of drawbacks is that it has to be developed with a nonprofit because of the funding streams.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But land banking can be an aggressive measure where you go out in a particular area and say that, we know that this area right here is poised for gentrification. And so before we get into full-fledged gentrification, we're going to go out and we're going to land bank all the properties that we can so that we can create some affordable housing for a longer period of time in that particular area.
Yeah, but I think, as you said, that the agency, obviously, if the county owns property, then there's a statutory process for the county selling the property and identifying it for affordable housing and giving it to the agency is essentially land banking. And then the benefit of having a staff in place that can administer an RFP is another component of land banking. I think that, and the fact that the government owns it, and therefore it's tax-free until it's, given to an agency or given to an entity, be it for-profit or not-for-profit, to develop is, all that seems appropriate. It seems like the missing component potentially of land banking is entitling the properties, and especially when you're talking about small properties that might be able to hold 20 homes, that burden and the whole not in my backyard syndrome that seems to come up with is take the variables out of it. It's got to be small for really hard developers, really small developers to be able to come in and get the properties entitled, and the county, of course, has their real estate department and the expertise. It seems like that may be a component of what we need to discuss in more earnest.
Right.
But anyway, again, the Community Land Trust is the entity like a homeowners association who 50 years from now is going to say, here's the deed restrictions and covenants that were made when this property was developed, and we're here to enforce it. I.e.,
And continue to enforce that.
Or some, yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So we'll look forward to seeing that, I think, and seeing where the city is with their process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there any other any other comments? Well, I want to say this has been certainly a helpful conversation. Staff is going to go back and we're going to get the examples of the land trust and the land banking for you. Send you a list of the properties with the mapping, of course, and I'll reach out to Jamie Ross to see if we can't get either her or Sean to speak about land trust. And she's done it before as well to the board at large, but it may be helpful for you guys if she speaks to you in a kind of smaller setting where you can ask questions and also get a copy of the City of Tampa's CLT effort, so you can have an idea of what's going on with that and how they're moving forward and how we may be able to be better partners with them in this process. Is there anything else I may have missed?
No, ma'am.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. And so, Nancy, Ms. Takamori,
Yes,
any comments?
I do not have any comments.
Okay. Ms. McDonald.
No comments from me, ma'am.
Okay, I want to thank everybody for coming in and supporting this subcommittee. And for those of you who may have missed it, Sarah Combs is going to be the lead on this, and we'll be reporting back to the AHEB board at large on our progress.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you for your time. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.